Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon. And we succeeded.
There's Entei.
Well, Entei looks a little scary to me. But you like Entei.
Entei's real big and strong, but it's still nice, just like you are, Papa.
I'm like Entei, am I? Imagine that. Well, then I am Entei.
You're Entei!
Here we go.
Disturb not the harmony of fire, ice, or lightning, lest these titans wreak destruction upon the world in which they clash. Though the water's great guardian shall arise to quell the fighting, alone its song will fail, thus the earth shall turn to ash. O chosen one, into thine hands bring together all three. Their treasures combined tame the beast of the sea. Now it begins.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek's Loose Cannon, the show where we take a look at the movies of past, sometimes in the future, but more often than not, these are things that have been relegated to the big box video stores, or sometimes you might find them on Tubi. You never know. So in today's edition of the show, I'm joined by my compatriot from the lovely Garden State of New Jersey.
It's Ken from This Anime, and yeah, we're talking, we already said this last time I was on this show.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking a look at more video game movies, though not directly based on any one video game storyline. This is sort of me and Ken have this thing where we talk about anime, and this is kind of a continuation of that. We're going to be doing the first 3 Pokemon movies. Obviously, Pokemon, huge global phenomena. I'm an avid Pokemon Go player with my wife and my friends here in Guelph. I've been playing Sword and I've been playing Scarlet over the last month and a half. And I've just gotten really into this franchise. And I decided to go back and watch these movies again just to see how well they hold up 20 years later. And I've got some thoughts. On these.
I always had a very strong opinion on some of these as a kid, and basically rewatching these has kind of solidified that opinion on these films in general. Again, my history with the franchise, I was a Pokemon kid growing up. That was a huge part of my childhood. Snorlax is still my number 1 Pokemon. You can't beat Snorlax, in my opinion, but... But yeah, it was a huge phenomenon, and it is still a part of my life. I still love Pokemon to this day. I still have a lot of my old Snorlax-based stuff sitting on my shelf with all my amiibos. I've got a little big Snorlax. I got my original, beanie Snorlax that's sitting on the shelf as well. It's always been a part of my life, and I don't think it's gonna stop.
Yeah, like Pokemon for me goes all the way back to high school. I had this friend at the time named Ryan, and we both played Pokemon Blue and Red. I can't remember how precisely I got a copy of the game. I think I got it from him or he gave it to me or something. So I remember playing that a lot in grades 11 and 12, which would tell you just how old I am. One of my best memories is back when you could only get Mew via the link cable. I remember us having to travel all around southern Ontario to get this Mew from Toys R Us. And I remember skipping school for that and having, frankly, a friggin' blast doing it. Yeah, it was fun. It really was. And I remember my grandparents, they used to give me lunch money to go to Burger King every day when the Pokemon toys were out in the kids' meals. And I remember getting the gold Pokemon cards with like Pikachu and Mew and all them. Really wish I still had one to this day because I still think that's one of the best Pokeball toys we've ever had. I actually found a Sand Slash keychain on eBay last year. I was really thinking about buying. But yeah, Pokemon was very much a big part of my childhood. I stopped playing regularly around Pokemon Yellow, but I did pick up Leaf Green years later and played that. And then in recent years, I've experimented with Pokemon X and Y. I played through Brilliant Diamond. Let's Go Eevee really got me back into it when I started playing Pokemon Go because there was cross compatibility between those games. And I tapped out of the anime series around the time of the second movie because I was like,
I tapped out of the anime proper around the time that they switched their entire voice cast. So that was the end of Generation 3, so Hoenn, that was the Battle Frontier season, is when they switched over their entire voice cast from being a lot of the New York-based voice actors over to LA.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those franchises where I remember meeting Veronica Taylor, the original voice of Ash.
Yep.
She was actually one of my first interviews when we did Fan Expo coverage way back in the day here on Twig. And that was a good time. And she was a remarkably pleasant woman, had a fantastic time. Maybe if I remember, I'll put together that promo in front of this episode or I'll send it to you. But yeah, so Pokemon, a huge part of my life. I remember one of the best things I did. I remember I left school early this day. And I got in line at Owen Sound Cinemas 3. I think it was either Cinemas 3 or Cinemas 5. So before the remodel happened in Owen Sound. And I come from a town of like 20,000 people, so not that many. And we skipped, we either skipped school or left school early to wait in line to be the first ones in Owen Sound to go see the Pokemon movie. And I remember Ryan... He used to dress up like Ash. Like, it was cosplay before it was cosplay, but he would wear it as like his everyday driver. He had like gloves, and I was not immune to it too. But he had like the hat, the vest, and everything. I'm like, you know what? That's kind of cool. And I remember the first time we played a Pokemon RPG, he invented one based upon the Sailor Moon tri-stat system that we played on Terrible Warriors like 1,000 years ago. And I remember that being a lot of fun. And I've always wondered why Pokemon has never translated to a tabletop RPG, because printing books for that would be so frigging easy. Because you basically, hey, here's a new generation. Here's your monster manual.
It's a licensing thing. And also, like, let me just be frank. The company that is the rights holders of the Pokemon anime and stuff, they're fucking assholes.
Yeah,
when it comes to their copyright.
Dumb. Yeah, it's kind of amazing how dumb some of these decisions they make. So, but yeah, so we went to go see Pikachu or Mewtwo. So, or no, sorry, Pokemon the first movie. First movie. Yeah. I remember seeing this. Remember getting the special Pokemon Mew card, which I want to say that's actually worth some serious money now.
I do believe so. I'm pretty sure. I know I have my copy of that card sitting in a binder at the bottom of the bookshelf at the moment.
That actually reminds me of something. So before we get into the movies, this is one of those random things that you wouldn't believe it unless it actually happened. So one night, me and Ryan, he's working at a pizza place. I'm helping him out and I get a free pizza out of it. So I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. So we leave the pizza place at around 3 a.m. and we forget he's put his Pokemon card binder on top of his car. It's 3 a.m. We are really tired. We just want to go home. So it turns out we left his card binder on top of his car as we drove away. Now, Ryan used to buy Pokemon cards religiously. I know for a fact he had a complete set, and I know he had a holo Charizard, and I know he kept that card in good shape.
My brother still has his.
Like, it's insane how much the Pokemon card market has gone up. Like, I watch a guy on YouTube called Mystic7. I think his name is Brandon. And some of those booster packs can go for hundreds of dollars. I seen him spend $10,000 on a booster box from the 90s or some shit like that. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God, how can you people afford this? But the card game is still going remarkably strong now. I think there's a new Pokemon card game coming out for
There's a
mobile
new set
phones
coming. Oh, well, here's the thing with the Pokemon TCG online stuff. They've been trying so hard to Yu-Gi-Oh-ify it, and they keep failing miserably.
Now you're going to have to explain that, because the only thing I know about Yu-Gi-Oh is card games on motorcycles. So explain this to me.
So Yu-Gi-Oh has always been very good at their video game work because, again, it was Konami when they didn't suck. And they were very good at adapting the card game into video game form, and especially with their online service, which is actually still running the new Duel. I think it's called Duel Masters or something like that. And that is a pretty decent online representation of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the modern day, and it runs very well. There's no issues with account systems and stuff. The problem with the Pokemon TCG online stuff is they keep changing the account system for them. So it gets really, really ridiculous how many times the account system gets changed, and again, stuff doesn't roll over. So people keep losing their digital libraries of all their cards and stuff, and frankly, no one likes messing with it because they keep changing it every 5-6 years.
Okay. I'm not a game dev, so I guess I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a mess. But going into the first movie, this is Mewtwo Strikes Back is the title that they use for it. The one thing that they don't have is there's an actual prequel bit to this movie that did get dubbed, but then they realized that it's way too dark for a kid because it involves a lot of death.
Yeah.
And it is dubbed. There was a dub for that bit, but then they rolled back that and said, no, we're just going to go straight into the Mewtwo Strikes Back bit.
Which I kind of liked that little bit of a prequel bit. Like, it adds a lot to it, and it's really cool, but we didn't... Like, I can't even remember the first place I think it was when it was released on home video is the first time I ever saw it. Or maybe it's the first time it was on DVD or something. I can't remember if it was on the VHS rip or
I think
not.
it was only released once. And I don't think it was on the VHS, because I remember owning the VHS of it.
Okay.
I think it might have been when they moved over to DVD. and had that as a special feature.
Mm-hmm.
But it's dark.
Yeah.
I remember watching it as an older kid, and I was just like, wow, that's pretty dark.
So I remember one of the most vivid things out of the first Pokemon movie is that intro scene with arguably the best version of the Pokemon theme song that has ever been done and will ever be done. Um, and Ash is fighting against some random trainer, and he starts pulling out Pokemon that no one's ever seen before. I remember when the Dawn fan came out, everybody in my theater was a collective gasp of, what the hell is that? And it was like so intense, and the music swells and the battle keeps going. No, that theater was so utterly enthralled by that battle. And it's the first time we'd really seen that many Pokemon on screen at once, and all these guys that are fairly like heavy hitters. Like you saw like Machamp there, you saw a Gyarados really get a chance to show what it can do. And obviously Mew being the mystical 151, we knew about Mewtwo, but we had no idea of how powerful Mewtwo was. And one of my all-time favorite Pokemon is Mewtwo, but specifically when he's in his like armor set, because he looks friggin' sick. And even now in Pokemon Go, that character has been released, but it's so limited that unless you played Pokemon when the game was out, you never got a chance to get him. But that's a side story for a different day. So continue on, Ken, describing the first movie.
Yeah, so the first movie's plot essentially is that Mewtwo basically finds out I'm just a clone and I'm being used by these humans and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So he kills all the scientists that created him. Also, ironically, the main doctor is also voiced by the same person that voices Mewtwo in this movie.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's Philip. Well, he's credited as Philip Bartlett, but his actual name is Jay Goad because that happened with a lot of the voice talent in Pokemon. A lot of people got credited under different names to skirt around payment and shit. Basically, it was shady shit going on in terms of paying for voice talent and stuff. Because 4Kids was cheap. And also like voiceover was kind of looked down upon when you're doing like theatrical work in New York. So it was kind of like you can't really mix those two.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I'm not sure how it is nowadays, but at the time that was a thing. But yeah, so Mewtwo kills all the scientists, and then down comes Giovanni, who goes, "Hey, I want to create a partnership." In quotes, because it's Giovanni, he's being a shady businessman kind of guy, and Mewtwo's like, "All right, I'll bite. Maybe this is my destiny." And and Giovanni basically, at one point, says exactly what he was meaning of it, and Mewtwo gets pissed again and goes, "No, this isn't my destiny." And this sequence where Mewtwo escapes is also in the anime in an episode near the end of the Indigo League, and it came out right around the time of the movie, so you just had that nice little tie-in and you just saw it from a different perspective essentially.
Oh, I had no idea.
And yeah, so Mewtwo makes the decision, you know what? Fuck all this shit. And I'm gonna just destroy the world. But before I do, I'm going to bring in a whole bunch of great trainers with their Pokemon and use them as basically use them as pawns to create a clone army of Pokemon, and my clone Pokemon will inherit the Earth.
Yes, sort of like I'll take the best. I'll create ones that aren't slaves to Pokemon trainers, because there can be no peace between man and Pokemon, because obviously Mewtwo had seen how things had worked out with Giovanni and the scientists, so he didn't trust nobody. And if you weren't with him, you were against him. So it didn't matter. Once he got your DNA, you're pretty much expendable. Like, he was willing to kick the crap out of these real Pokemon for his clones ones. And
I also will note there are certain sequences in the first movie that I distinctly remember the English score for it, because everything up to movies 1, 2, and 3, all their scores were redone for the English adaptation. 4 is the first time where they actually did use the Japanese score. But it is like the moment when you just see Mewtwo's arm creating this giant monsoon storm. That musical score is ingrained into my brain for all time. Just that, like, that violin doo doo doo. Like that musical kick ingrained in my brain for the rest of the time.
you know what's weird? One of the first anime music videos I ever saw was Prodigy's Firestarter, and it used scenes from Pokemon the first movie. And I don't know why that just triggered in my mind, but allergies. I seem to recall the intro to the song was like, and it shows Mewtwo like ripping apart the lab with his psychic powers. I seem to recall that scene pretty vividly. I would almost be positive the video exists still on YouTube right now. If you typed in Pokemon Prodigy Firestarter, it probably still exists. Yeah, another thing I remember very vividly about the first movie is when there's the battle between Mew and Mewtwo. That theater I was in, people were just like, yeah. And then when Ash got
Petrified.
petrified and turned to stone, I distinctly remember kids crying. I
remember the first time I cried in the theater. Like,
I remember, like, again, I'm in high school seeing this. I looked at Ryan. I was like, is this happening? Like, are they doing what I think they're gonna do? Are they gonna Optimus Prime Ash? Unfortunately, no. But they brought him back to the power of friendship.
Yeah, there's actually the Japanese version of this movie actually has a direct foreshadowing from the like the head woman with the blue hair. The story she actually tells in the Japanese version is directly related to all the Pokemon crying and bringing back a human to life. Like, that's the actual story that she tells. So, like, in the Japanese version, that's actually foreshadowing. In the English version, that comes out of fucking nowhere.
But say, yeah, it just happens, which is cool on one hand, I guess, but it was like, okay.
Yeah. And, like, again, despite all of the minor issues I have with, like, the stupid dubisms and the wrongly naming some Pokemon in the actual dub. Also, like, probably one of the funniest dub lines 4Kids has ever done. The Vikings are
I
from
was
Minnesota.
waiting for you to
joke.
mention that. Now, you know what's fucked up, Ken? It took me literally until this year to get that joke. Like, I remember Blair had to take Dutch, my little white kitten, to the emergency vet, and I didn't go with her because I just didn't have a wheelchair at that time. So I'm waiting here. It's 2:00 in the morning. I'm waiting for her to come back from the vet, and I'm watching Pokemon just because I need something to distract me for like an hour or two. And when the line comes up, Vikings, they mostly come from Minnesota, and I'm sitting there thinking about it. 2:30 in the morning. I'm thinking, holy shit, I get it now. That's a football team. 20 years, folks, and a joke flew over my head for 20 years.
Yeah, that is it. It is still, it's still one of those English and like also the English only score. Like also the incorporation of like all the pop music that they put into it is also ingrained into my brain. Like I still own my cassette tape of the soundtrack. And I've actually recreated that because there's an issue where that they have never re-released that soundtrack digitally ever. So the only way to do it is via playlisting. And there are some people that have done decent playlists, but no one has. I haven't found an actual full playlist, so I made it myself.
Yeah, I remember the CD and the cassettes for this movie selling really well, but there was also some weird
I believe
picks
it.
on the soundtrack.
I believe the first movie's soundtrack went platinum.
Yeah, like, and again, that Billy Crawford, I think that's the guy who did the Pokemon theme for the
Yes.
movie. I still, like I said, I will die defending that cover of this song. Like, it is so good.
It's up there. They actually, speaking of just like literally yesterday, the final sequences of the last season of the Pokemon anime came out where Ash actually wins the championship for the first time for the legit championship for the first time. And he battles Leon, and in the final battle, they drop the original theme, and it's just like that still gives me chills.
Yeah, I'm looking on Spotify right now just to see if there is someone who has the soundtrack. And holy shit, some of these picks are so weird. Like, the Pokemon theme makes sense, but why in the ever-loving, whatever god you believe in, why is Britney Spears on this soundtrack? Why is Blessed Union of Souls with Oh Brother, My
Blessed
Brother?
Union of Souls, that is the only song. That is a song that is ingrained into my brain simply because it is during that final battle. And
But
it's
so weird. Like,
it's random.
Yeah, like I talked with
believe-
someone who does this for a living like years ago.
Mm.
And I was like, how the hell do you decide what songs go in a movie? And evidently, I think if I remember correctly, they told me it's up to record executives. Like, okay, guys, here's the songs that we have. Here are the songs we'd like to push. What do you think? And that's how it goes. And I seem to recall asking that question tied to another video game franchise when Resident Evil Apocalypse came out. And I was like, one of my favorite bands was on that soundtrack. I'm like, but they're not in the movie. And they're like, oh, well, that's because of this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, like it was weird. Although I would argue that To Be a Master is a better soundtrack, even though the songs are a little bit goofy.
Yeah, To Be a Master is also widely available.
Yes, and it's still pretty good Pokemon music today. I mean, one of my favorite tracks is, I think it's Viridian City, sticks with me all the time, and I don't know why. Yeah, I mean, the first movie I still think relatively holds up today. It's still a fun Pokemon adventure, especially if you're that era of Gen 1 just going into Gen 2. You'll definitely get some kind of fun out of it. Plus, Mewtwo's a boss, and he's always one of the most iconic Pokemon of the entire franchise.
Yeah, no, the animation still holds up in this. And then when we go to the next one, I have opinions.
See, you know what's weird? I was watching Pokemon the movie 2000 last night, and I think I like it more than I remember. Now, I'm a Legendary Bird Trio guy. That is my jam. I love Lugia, Moltres, Articuno, and Zapdos. Those are my boys. But I remember seeing this movie again in the theaters with Ryan. I had dropped out of the show by this point, so I know they're in Johto by now. Or the Orange Islands or whatever.
Yeah, this is Orange Islands.
Yeah,
so.
and I was like, who the hell are some of these guys? And I'm watching it last night and okay, I know who you are because I have you in Pokemon Go. And it was kind of different just seeing all these Pokemon that I just had never seen before. And it's the first time besides a Meowth we'd really seen a Pokemon talk and people could understand with the Slow King. And again, that was another thing during the theater. All the kids were like, what the hell is that? And we were so surprised. I will say this, though. I like the designs for some of the side characters they brought in, like the people that are going to participate in the ceremony. Like they kind of introduce, like, we haven't got into the plot yet. Ken will bring you up on that one, but I like how they tried to give Ash a romantic angle in this movie, and they kind of give them a little bit of character development, yet it's still being innocent and cutesy without it being too weird. So I'll go into that a little bit more once you go through the plot, but I just wanted to mention that while it's on the top of my mind. I think there's a little bit better character development in this movie than any of the other ones. So you're up, Ken.
So Pokemon 2000 is, we have the introduction of this collector character who isn't actually named in the US English dub. So, but Galadrin is his Japanese name, and he basically is plotting to collect all of the legendary birds, including Lugia. And he basically starts a cataclysmic event by creating an imbalance in the legendary bird trio. Because I believe he captures Moltres first, then ends up getting Zapdos, and eventually takes out Articuno as well. And then goes, hi, Lugia. All right, you're my main prize. And as a result, everything goes to absolute crap, and the world is in an imbalance. And so Ash is basically told, all right, collect these 3 orbs to quell the fighting between the 3 legendary birds, along with Lugia's calming song will calm the 3 legendary birds who are fighting right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, I think this movie is barely watchable.
See, I completely disagree, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I've just got some memories associated with this movie. Like, I thought the music in this was really nice.
Well, the music's great.
Like I said, I like the idea of this girl. I can't remember her. I think her name is Melody.
Yes, Melody.
And she's kind of like a romantic rival to Misty. Like, she just likes Ash. She's like, hey, he's cute, and you're the chosen one, and blah, blah, blah. And like, hey, you should look after your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend. He's a boy and he's a friend. So thus, by definition, he is your boyfriend. She's like, shut up. But there is one line that I really like towards the end where Ash gets his ass kicked. He's floating out in the water, and it's Melody and Misty are talking, and she's like, "Well, Ash isn't truly ever alone. He's got me," and I like that.
That bit of dialogue is really nice.
And
I really do like that.
And then there's a part where Team Rocket's like, "Well, we've got to be heroes this time. If we don't, then this is not going to end well for like anybody." And you see Jesse, James, and Meowth decide to, hey, we're actually going to do something to help, and they help Ash get on Lugia, but they realize they're too heavy. If they stay on with him, they're going to lose this fight. And they're like, well, we got to do it. And they, in any other movie, they would have sacrificed themselves. Here, they sacrifice themselves, but they survive. But it was just a nice moment there too. Again, Team Rocket getting a character arc, which is fantastic. I was really happy to see that. And just Lugia, I thought, was a great new legendary Pokemon. It had some like agency. It knew what it wanted to do. Not as cool as Mewtwo's I'm going to destroy everything arc and learning the value of life, friendship, and relationships. But I really liked it. Although the collector character, as you mentioned, doesn't have any real like, I want to control Pokemon because reasons. But everything else I liked, except I knew fuck all about this Tracy character. All I knew is that I think he took pictures. He was a Pokemon research assistant to Dr. Oak or Professor Oak.
He ends up becoming Professor Oak's research assistant post Orange Islands.
Yeah, and I was just like, okay, who's this asshole? Where is Brock? Where is my boy?
Brock is lusting over Professor Ivy, aka, oh god, her voice is so boring and puts me to fucking sleep.
But yeah, like, so I don't know. I really liked it, and I felt like the battle between the birds and Lugia, that one-upped what happened in Mewtwo Strikes Back, where it was basically two energy balls bouncing off each other. This one, like, we're seeing the landscape get tore up. We're seeing fire blast, electric blast, ice blast, then Lugia coming in and cleaning house. Then all three of them team up and whoop his ass. Like, I just felt like the battle sequence was better. And then when Slowking says, all the Pokemon have come from all around the world, and people are like, well, why? Because they know they might be needed. And I was looking through the crowd shots last night while I was watching this, thinking, all right, I know who that is. I know who that is. I know who that is. I'm surprised to see that there. Like, it felt like the Where's Waldo of Pokemon, which arguably a lot of these movies are like, hey, can you spot the Easter egg for 3 frames of animation? But I was like, I really, really like it. And I came away. This used to be one of my least favorite movies with some cool elements. I think this is probably, of the 3 movies we watched, I don't know. I think as a movie, I like this one better, but I like the storyline in the first one better. I don't know. Just this one, it honestly surprised me how much I enjoyed it upon a second viewing. Like, and I hadn't seen Pokemon the movie 2000 since I remember reviewing the Blu-ray about 10 years ago. So it's been a long time. But I really enjoyed what I saw here. However, though, that being said, the soundtrack, not as memorable. I think the best track to come out of it was a song called Pokemon World, which I still think is awesome.
Pokemon World is the movie version of the Orange Islands theme.
Yeah, like, just awesome. It's a fantastic time. And just before I forget this, because I know this isn't Johto League, but if you go into if you go into YouTube and type in ska tunes, type in ska Pokemon, a guy, I think his channel's called the Ska Tune Network. He does a cover of the Johto cover with like horns and everything. And it is so friggin' awesome. But yeah, like, this is a soundtrack. I'm just looking at it on Spotify right now.
I think the biggest surprise that I was like, oh, right, I remember that was in here, was Weird Al's Pokemon Polka.
Wasn't that... No, Pokemon, that was on the next movie, because that's in the
No.
end credits. Are you sure?
It's 2000 that has the polka.
Oh, okay. Then I got those mixed up then, because I remember noticing that too, the Weird Al Pokemon, which I guess everybody's got to have a payday. But it's well done. I mean, it rhymes.
It's
and that's
Weird
Al.
It's Weird Al. You know you're gonna get something good.
Which, again, that's when his career, I think, was at just about the highest it has ever been, because that would have been around the time of Running with Scissors and Poodle Hat. I think it come out around that time.
Yeah, it was 99, so...
So, yeah, so after that, I think Weird Al's next big album would have been the one where he spoofed Eminem, which would have been about 2004, 2005. So, yeah, this is when he was riding super high, and my voice is cracking, sorry. But yeah, like, I think there's a lot to like in Pokemon the movie 2000. Like I said, great fight scenes, some good animation, cool character designs, nice little character moments. I really enjoyed this one. I actually had such a good time watching it. I didn't expect it to be as much fun as it was. And then we come to this one. I have some opinions.
Wow.
Walk me through it, boy.
So, Pokemon the Movie 3, which is actually one of my favorites. We have a young little girl, 5-year-old called Molly, who has lost her father to the unknown, which is a strange group of Pokemon that are basically the alphabet. And they can make a person's dreams real using their psychic energy. And she, after finding out that her dad is essentially dead, missing but dead, she has the unknown create this fantasy world for her to live in, and kind of just, you have this little girl basically going through the stages of grief as she has the unknown create a representation of her father in the form of Entei, and Entei is actually voiced by famous voice actor Dan Green, and yeah, it is essentially that Entei ends up kidnapping Ash's mom as a surrogate to Molly's also missing mother, who, it's not said in the English version, but in the Japanese version, she was also a researcher hunting unknown, and it is basically assumed that she disappeared in a similar fashion to her dad. And yeah, basically it's about them trying to rescue Ash's mom and kind of bring this girl back to reality.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's one of my favorites in terms of its story. I mean, its animation is all right, but its story sticks with me in terms of just the idea of this girl going through this loss of her father at such a young age that she just kind of just becomes super like a child. She just acts her age, and it's trying to tell a kid, like, your dad's gone and you need to move on and be in reality and not live in this fantasy world that the unknown have created for you.
The thing about this movie, like, when you explain it like that, I do appreciate what the story was trying to tell. But the thing that I really dislike about this, and I guess this makes me very, very, very juvenile, is the design of the unknown made me so fucking infuriated that it was so hard for me to disentangle myself from that. And Entei's a great design. He looks cool. I'm not sure what he's called. Like maybe he's the imagination Pokemon or something.
No, Entei. Well, in this movie, Entei is just a fantasy creation of what Entei is legitimately in the Pokemon universe. This is the Entei we get in the movie is just an illusion.
Okay, yeah. Um, like I don't know. There were parts of this where I was just like, "Fuck, this is so stupid." And I think honestly, like if I had to be quite honest and real here, this is the movie that made me disentangle from the Pokemon franchise almost entirely up until I started playing the games for review on Twig or years upon years later with Pokemon Go when I started playing that in 2016. It's just I don't know. And while I was watching it last night, there were some cool moments in this. I really don't like how Team Rocket got reduced to comedy again because I felt like they'd made such strides in number 2. This could have been a continuation of their redemption arc.
Yeah, no, basically it's just Team Rocket is just the joke.
And
that's most of that. That's literally all the movies.
Yeah, and frustrating. And then again, while I'm watching it, when Molly, the girl, discovers she can transform herself in this imagination world created by the unknowns and Entei, she starts fighting Brock and Misty with Pokemon she can just randomly summon. This annoyed me only because I play so much Pokemon Go. Fampy just beat Brock's giant Onix. No, get out.
I mean, like, I actually did like legitimately go, okay, could a Fanfi at max stats, basically just OP, make Fanfi the most OP it could possibly be? Can it Oko and Onyx? And I was like, yes, technically it can. I actually did the damage calcs. Technically, it can. If you basically min-max the fuck out of it, and it's level 100 versus Brock's, which could be anywhere less than 100.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I legitimately was like, you know what? I'm gonna actually just damage calc this and see, because it's just something interesting to look at. But yeah. Technically, you could legitimately do that.
Okay. I also liked how they brought in, again, I only recognize a lot of these Pokemon because I've started to play Go in the last couple years. It was cool to see a Apom, a Noctowl, a Flaffy, because I love Ampharos because it's got a Mega form, which is cool. Cyndaquil, Typhlosion's awesome. Totodile was great. And again, cool way to use their moves. There's one point where they're trying to break into the Crystal Palace there, and they use Vulpix and Cyndaquil's flamethrower to drill through the crystal ice thing, and then they use water gun to create like a tunnel through it. Yep. And I'm thinking, that's actually really clever, and I really, really enjoyed that part of it.
Going into the theme for this is this is one of my favorite movie themes. This is a recreation of the first Pokemon Johto theme out of the 3, because basically, obviously, Indigo League was just one theme across 2 seasons. And then there's Orange Islands, which was Pokemon World. This is Pokemon Johto, and Johto had 3 seasons that made up the Johto arc, as it were. and the same goes for Hoenn. It basically continues on a 3 arcs, a 3 season structure for all of the anime up until Hoenn, which had an extra season because of Battle Frontier.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, it just started to devolve, essentially.
Trying to think of what else I really enjoyed about I think some of the visuals I really enjoyed, like the whole crystal thing. I think looked kind of neat, and you know they were experimenting with CG to bring in so many unknowns
They
on
worked
screen.
they worked for the time. The CG is actually pretty decent compared to some stuff that you would see in other Japanese productions.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, Pokemon at this point was running on infinite money.
Yeah, and okay, so this one went theatrical. I seem to
Yes.
recall getting an Entei Pokemon card when I went to see this in theaters, but I feel like a lot of this movie was so forgettable. Like, again, but at least they brought back Brock. You had Misty back.
Yep.
Random trainer who hung out with them because that's just the way it goes in these movies.
Yep.
I don't recall a lot of memorable stuff, but the story, you're right, is more mature in some ways because you're dealing with a lot of loss and grief. Although it obviously ends on a happy ending. I liked how
Yeah.
she actually gets a real Teddy Ursa at the end of the movie, who becomes, I guess, her
Yeah.
first Pokemon, which was cute. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't like this movie. And like, I don't hate it, but I don't like it. And that sucks. Now, originally we were going to cover Celebi, which is something I know nothing about. And maybe we'll have
Yeah.
to come back and do more Pokemon movies this summer because it's a pretty easy topic to do. But
Yep.
this feels like this is when the Pokemon franchise was starting to take a turn. I know the series was still popular with kids and it was still popular with the video games, but I feel like it had left the public consciousness. Like it was there, but it wasn't as mainstream as it used to be.
I think I think once Johto took a very long. They spent a lot of time in Johto in the anime and whatnot, so it was a lot harder to just sit and wait for more stuff to come out because Johto even had a whole, like, in the anime, Johto had a whole side quest that was completely superfluous to what you would do in the games that took up half of a season of the anime, and it was just this one big giant tournament arc in the middle of Johto. And then it was back to business as usual in Johto, and then finally the final tournament at the end of Johto.
Yeah, like maybe it's because I was out of the anime by then. Maybe it's because I felt like it was too much to keep up because I think the decks had
Yeah.
grown to over by 500 at that time.
No. It was about 250. It was about like 250, around between 250 and 300 was Johto.
Okay, so all right, so maybe it wasn't that bad. It felt like I couldn't keep up with it anymore. And when I saw the design of the unknowns, I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm out. I'm not counting the letter A as a Pokemon. Although as a side note, I don't have all of them in Pokemon Go, so fuck you. It's I don't know. It's something that it's always rubbed me the wrong way, but now that I'm older, I have 20 Pokemon movies that I'm able to watch. It's interesting to go through it, and now that I play so much Go and Scarlet and Sword, I'm seeing what's out there. I don't know. Like I like these movies because they're a fun video game movie franchise that it doesn't have to take itself as seriously as The Witcher or Castlevania. It's not as bad as, some of the other cartoon adaptations we've seen recently. it's different than the Mario movie because that's a direct adaptation of the source material. I would say these 3 movies, yeah, they're probably worth watching, especially if you're still into all the games now. You'll see where a lot of these Pokemon have come from. I don't know whether it's worth going back watching the show. And I've been really thinking about that because now there's the new show based on Scarlet and Violet, but it's not dubbed yet. I'm very curious to follow that when it gets dubbed because I could literally get in on the ground floor and not get overwhelmed and lost. And because I'm playing the games, I can stay current. Yeah, like Pokemon, it's one of those franchises that comes and goes with me. Because I said, it was a very big part of my childhood. And since it's something me and Blair do literally every day for Pokemon Go, and I play with my friend Jordan, I got friends down at the local park that I play with. Hell, I just became the Facebook group admin for the local group here in Guelph. So I don't know. I'm really, really, really digging it in the last couple of years, what this franchise brings to the table. And from a theatrical standpoint and movie standpoint, I think there is something pretty cool here for kids. I'm really hoping in the next couple of years we finally get a sequel to Detective Pikachu. I really hope so. I doubt it. I know we've got the new game coming out in November, I believe. No, October 6th, I think. So that'll be a big shot in the arm. We got the DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming out in the winter and fall and winter of this year.
Yeah,
So,
I'm guessing probably November and then
Christmas
February
probably.
or something.
Yeah, so it's a good time to be a Pokemon fan. I mean, the Pokemon Go game is still going strong. There are Go Fests happening in New York, Osaka, and London. The card game is still going stupid strong. Literally, folks, I'm not kidding when I say this. If you happen to have any old Pokemon cards in a binder somewhere, you may want to get those checked out. You may very well be surprised what you could be sitting on potentially if you took kind of care of them. The toys are still stupid hot now. There's a new line being put out by Jack Specific, I want to say, where they're like fully articulated. There's a Greninja. I've got the Articuno and the Rayquaza. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a pretty great time. And with the Nintendo Direct the other day, like talking about the DLC and the couple new games and everything else, it's a good time. So honestly, folks, if you can track down the Blu-ray that has the first 3 movies, I think it's worth getting. In fact, Ken, why don't you talk for 3 seconds? I'm curious to see how much that Blu-ray costs.
It's like $20.
Yeah,
it's still in print.
Yeah, so grab it if you can. Just gonna type out 3 movie pack. There you go. Pokemon movie, whatever. Pokemon
Viz Media has technically the rights to most of the Pokemon features at this point. The only 4 features that as far as I know they still don't have the rights to are Forever, Movie 5, Movie 6, and Movie 7.
Yeah, I'm just looking right now on Amazon Canada. And for Pokemon movies, I see there's a 4 movie pack for Black and White, which I've never seen any of those. So I guess maybe that'll be a jump.
The Black and Whites, I was already way off on the anime at that point. I think the last movie that I legitimately I enjoyed was the first Sinnoh, and that's the Diamond and Pearl, and that also has a movie pack from Viz. I think it's a 4-pack if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I see Pokemon the movie 3-pack, which is the first 3 movies that we just covered. I see Detective Pikachu, the Black and White 4 movie collection, Pokemon 4 movie collection, which is... I see Latios and Latias, Celebi.
Yeah, that's the Miramax release, and that's out of print.
I see Destiny Deoxys and Jirachi, which has Groudon and Absol.
Yeah, So the Diamond and Pearl 4-pack is the Blu-ray is $20, and then they also have a steel book for the Diamond and Pearl, which contains all of the Diamond and Pearl movies, which was Darkrai, Giratina, and Shaman, Arceus, and Zoroark.
Yeah, so cool shit, guys. Honestly, we'll probably end up talking about this more at some point during the year. Maybe for Christmas we'll do another kind of Pokemon thing. I know I was talking about this with JT. As we take a break this summer, you're probably hearing this podcast during July. Me, Ken, and JT will be taking over the show as we often do each and every August. We'll be programming everything with Aaron and probably our new friend Enrique from Welcome to Primetime, or maybe bring in some other guests. And yeah, we're just going to talk about everything weird, entertaining. I'm sure Ken will show me some more strange movies that I'll probably dig at some point. Or maybe we'll do another kind of like a sequel to last year's movies, Ken, where we did fun kids movies. Because that just, I get to see some interesting things. So yeah, we'll talk about a little bit about this off mic, because I think I've got some ideas for you. So anyway, guys, if you want to check these out, you can buy them, like I said, pretty easily via Amazon. Shouldn't cost you more than $20 or $30 at most. Entertaining, especially if you have younger kids that are in the Pokemon. This is a cool way to show them where like everything started. Even if you're an older adult who just wants to have a little bit of fun nostalgia, I don't think this is a bad way to spend $20 or $30. So yeah, I guess that's going to do it for this edition of Loose Cannon. I know Aaron and Alex have recorded a couple. I should be back on that show really soon with those guys. So hopefully you are enjoying your summer. As I was saying at the end of my last podcast, please make sure you are wearing sunscreen, abiding by all local laws involving fire bans, because it's just been really bad this year. But most importantly, be safe this summer. So for This Week in Geeks, Loose Cannon, we have been
Ken from This Anime.
And I've been Mike the Birdman saying, be kind, rewind. We'll catch you next time here at the Twig Video Store, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
I didn't know Vikings still existed.
They mostly live in Minnesota.
Quick, change the channel.
You're wasting your life making shit. Nobody cares. These movies are terrible.
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.